is the new Balaton Park circuit in Western Hungary. First Grand Prix of Hungary since 1992. Hosted World Superbikes here in July. A tight first sector, particularly in turns 1 and 2. There was drama there in the 13-lap sprint yesterday. Good overtaking opportunity down on the braking zone into turn 5. 75th different circuit to host a MotoGP race since it all began 76 long years ago. Last new track before Balaton, of course, was India, all the way back in 2023. 1, 5, 9, 10, 15 and 16. So the first MotoGP race action in over 3 decades took place in yesterday's 13-lap sprint. Drama in the tight first corners. Fabio Quartararo on the dirty inside part of the circuit just avoided Fabio Di Giannantonio and Marco Bezzecchi. Unfortunately, he did collect Enea Bastianini, who further ran on a dramatic opening lap, then took out Frenchman Johann Zarco. Pedro Acosta, who crashed early on in the day in Q2, was out of point scoring contention at turn 4. And at the checkered flag once again, as has been the pattern, the story of Sprint Saturdays throughout 2025. Marc Marquez was simply on a different level. Untouchable once again was the 32-year-old Spaniard as he racked up sprint win number 13 of the season so far. And today, as we go double the distance, Marc Marquez hones in on his 7th successive double victory. He's 152 points clear in the MotoGP World Championship, starting from his 8th pole position of the campaign, 74th in his Grand Prix career. A win here this afternoon will be already his 10th of this incredible first season with the factory Ducati team. Marc Marquez in such golden winning form. It's 13 wins in a row now for the number 93. Last time he was beaten was on the Sunday race action all the way back in late May now at the British Grand Prix at Silverstone. Can he win on what is yet another anti-clockwise track? 33 of his previous 71 victories have come on anti-clockwise circuits where he has been so strong down the years, has Marc Marquez. Big favourite coming into this 26-lap Grand Prix of Hungary. He's on a front row which features 2 Italians, Marco Bezzecchi and Fabio Di Giannantonio. He was joined on the sprint podium yesterday by 2 Italians. It was an excellent Saturday for Pertamina Enduro VR46 Racing, as Di Giannantonio took 2nd place ahead of his teammate Frankie Morbidelli. Good Saturday as well for the factory Hondas, as both Luca Marini and Joan Mir, for the first time in the sprint era, we had 2 Hondas finish inside the top 6. Marini 4th, Joan Mir in 6th place. Under blazing sunshine, under nigh on perfect conditions for this Michelin Grand Prix of Hungary. We'll be racing in about 40 minutes time to see if anybody can stop Marc Marquez from taking another giant leap towards MotoGP glory. In the company of Matt Burton, Lewis Sotheby in the commentary box, with Jack Appleyard down in pit lane. So far, Lewis, there's no spoilers in this commentary box, but there's been much anticipation, much hype around our first trip to Hungary in over 3 decades. And what we've seen so far, we have not been disappointed. Brilliant Moto3 action, brilliant Moto2 action, both decided on the last lap at the last corner. Let's hope for more of the same in MotoGP.
We will be keeping our fingers crossed. 2 unbelievable Grand Prix to bring you already, but the main event is still to come. The MotoGP battle coming up over 26 laps of Balaton Park, and well, there are no foregone conclusions in Grand Prix racing, even if Marc Marquez has made it feel differently in recent times. The sprint yesterday saw all sorts of lap 1 drama. Marc Marquez was inches away really from being taken out himself into turn 1, so there is still plenty for Marc Marquez to overcome here today if he's to extend that incredible winning run, as Hungary gets set to see the main event of MotoGP go racing here over a Grand Prix for the first time since 1992.
Marc Marquez has not won 7 Grand Prix in a row since 2014, of course, where he opened his account that year with victories in the opening 10 Grand Prix. That could be the 22nd different circuit he has prevailed at in MotoGP. One rider, perhaps the only rider that really, he certainly felt like the closest challenger to Marc throughout the weekend until this happened in qualifying yesterday. Monumental get-off for Pedro Acosta, and of course a thumbs up from our brilliant camera operator Joao, who met Pedro Acosta late on. That was a real big scare, wasn't it, as that factory KTM went barrel rolling at high speed through what is a very long gravel trap. And brilliant by Pedro Acosta and the factory KTM team to invite Joao to the garage. It's another thumbs up. Let's hope his Sunday afternoon is a rather more trouble-free affair than his Saturday morning here in Hungary. Full respect, though, to Red Bull KTM for inviting Joao to their box. And I think he got a little bit of a souvenir, a signed knee slider from Pedro Acosta. That was one of 3 crashes this weekend for Pedro Acosta. A weekend here in Hungary that has promised to deliver so much, but as yet has delivered very little, Lewis, because as we mentioned, Friday and Saturday morning in particular, you certainly felt like Marc's biggest challenger was going to be Pedro Acosta. Yeah,
and as always, I feel in 2025 it comes down to qualifying for Pedro Acosta. You just saw a shot there of Hungarian motorcycle racing royalty Gabor Talmashi getting ready to head out on a parade lap. You can hear the unmistakable sound behind us of the 125 bike that he won the World Championship on back in 2007. He is, as mentioned, royalty in this part of the world. In many respects, one of the reasons that motorcycle racing is so popular here in Hungary is down to that man.
Oh, this brings hairs to stand up on the back of your neck, hearing that 2-stroke singing down towards the first corner. Yeah, unfortunately, Gabor Talmashi never got the chance to, of course, race in front of his home crowd. I remember for years and years and years when he was really in his prime, in his pomp, the Hungarian fans used to go in there tens of thousands to the Czech Grand Prix in Brno. There's probably at one stage more Hungarian fans in Brno than there were Czech fans. Such was the popularity of Gabor Talmashi. A special moment for him as he gets to do the parade lap here. A special Saturday, as we mentioned, for VR46 Racing. Fabio Di Gianantonio second, Frankie Morbidelli third. A good day for those 2 Italians. A dreadful day once again for another high-profile Italian, Pecco Bagnaia. You can't sugarcoat it. A dreadful weekend all around for the 28-year-old on the factory Ducati, who limped home at the checker flag at the end of that 13-lap sprint. 13th place, almost 15 seconds behind his teammate Marc Marquez. I'm sure they're going to run with that the sort of radical new setup on the GP25 once again this afternoon. But Bagnaia in a lot of bother, Lewis.
And it feels like Bagnaia is quite keen to see the back of Balaton Park, although he is certainly not going to give up. That is just not in his nature. But it was another tough moment for him this morning. He didn't look too happy either in the morning warm-up session. This was the battle between the VR46 Ducatis yesterday over second and third, and Di Gianantonio winning that early arm wrestle on the first lap of the sprint, and that was a crucial battle really, because that secured him second place. Morbidelli accepting in the end that he didn't have the pace to go with either his teammate nor Marc Marquez over the 13-lap distance, but a 2-3 nonetheless for VR46, and each of them taking their second sprint podiums of the season.
Yeah, and that will be a big fillip as far as Di Gianantonio is concerned, because the 26-year-old has struggled for form of late, particularly on Sundays. At DNF when he was second and very well placed, of course, in the German Grand Prix at the Sachsenring pre-summer break. A real average return to form, or return to action after our holidays in Brno when he was 16th, and then of course he was out of contention with a barbecue exit with a big spectacular engine failure in Spielberg. So no points in the last 3 Grand Prix for Digia. No points in the sprint yesterday for Bagnaia, and this was adding to his woes in this morning's warm-up session. He'd already had his number 1 bike go kaput with a gearbox issue. This was on his second bike when he botched the practice start, and it's all just starting to boil to the surface, isn't it? That anger and frustration, which he's normally so adept at hiding, so good at masking. Well, you just get a sense there he's not a rider that sort of tends to lose his cool publicly, but yeah, these seemingly endless list of problems look like they are starting to get on top of Bagnaia.
Fist nearly went through the screen of his Ducati this morning. He'd already had some issues on his bike at the start of that session. We understand it was some sort of gearbox issue on that Ducati, and then, as you saw there, couldn't get the bike off the line either when he practiced a start. And of course, we only have to go back to last weekend for Bagnaia having problems off the line and dropping way down the field in the Austrian Grand Prix sprint.
Well, he's broken records and set milestones galore, hasn't he, in his Grand Prix career? There's another one, the first rider ever to win 6 successive MotoGP races for 2 different manufacturers. Of course, he was the talisman for HRC for so many years, and now he is the undisputed A-list star inside the factory Ducati garage. There was an excellent sprint yesterday for our reigning world champion, Jorge Martin, who it seems week by week, day by day, session by session is really coming to terms with that factory at Aprilia. He excelled in that 13-lap sprint yesterday, did the Martinator, starting from a worst ever grid position in MotoGP down in 17th place, but he fought his way through to 9th. It was a battle that he had with Pedro Acosta, which saw Acosta sort of get too impatient, and he crashed out of contention. So a first sprint point of the season as far as Martin is concerned. Work to do today, they're coming from 17. I think another top 10, a double top 10 will represent more than a weekend's solid work here for the Spaniard.
Well, if he's looking for some good news, he's already had some, because he's been promoted to 16th on the grid today with Jack Miller's 3-place grid penalty. 2 riders dropping 3 places on the grid from where they started the sprint yesterday. They are Jack Miller, as mentioned, back to 17th, and Alex Marquez, second in the World Championship, of course, who qualified down in 11th, picked up a 3-place grid penalty in the same instant when both Alex Marquez and Jack Miller got in the way of Pecco Bagnaia. Of course, we also have Enea Bastianini and Fabio Quartararo with 2 and 1 long lap penalties respectively to serve from the second run.
Yeah, penalties galore so far this weekend. Fabio Quartararo for his first offence. Nobody needs to tell Fabio that he got it all wrong on the inside run down to that tight first corner. Dangerous situation on the opening lap. First offence. The outcome will be a long lap penalty trip for Fabio in this Grand Prix. There he is on the left-hand side of your picture, starting from the back of the second row in 6th place. A good launch away, wasn't it, as Fabio is having a look at this himself now at the replay on the dirty line. As soon as he squeezed a handful of brake, he was out of control on that Yamaha. So fortunate not to take out both the Gian Antonio and Bezzecchi. He's having a real good lap at it right now. He said as soon as he saw the Gian Antonio cutting to the inside line, which of course the Italian was perfectly entitled to do, Fabio was just released the brakes and started praying. Unfortunately, the rider he did make contact with was Enea Bastianini. As he said, just that dirty inside line, he realised he was in a spot of bother, released the brakes, and it was just hope for the best. Marc Marquez was also almost caught up in that early melee. So a long lap penalty coming the way of Fabio in this Grand Prix.
Yeah, Mark said he could hear the Yamaha whistling behind him as he rounded turn 1, blissfully unaware of just how much chaos has been caused behind him. As we said yesterday, though, Fabio Quartararo really not that kind of rider, doesn't usually get involved in those kind of incidents, but he does pay the price in the form of a long lap penalty today. And you'd think the long lap penalty he'll serve, and the 2 that Enea Bastianini is going to have to serve, because he was on a second defence for causing an accident, should play into the hands of Fabian Aldeguer there, who you saw on screens. The riders on row 3 of the grid, Acosta, Aldeguer and Luca Marini, of course, came through to 4th place in the sprint yesterday, will surely be straight ahead of those 2 riders up ahead of them, a row ahead of them on the grid with long lap penalties, so perhaps they won't need to be quite so aggressive on the opening lap.
Honda upgrades are working a treat, aren't they, right now, as far as Luca Marini and Joan Mir are concerned. Electronics tweaks and some aero improvements in Spielberg, and now a new chassis which was also rolled out in Austria, was raced by both Marini and Mir in yesterday's sprint. 28-year-old Italian Luca Marini That was his best sprint since Qatar 2023, certainly head and shoulders his best sprint for Honda. And after all of his recent woes, Joan Mir really has started to hit some top form again. 6 in the Grand Prix in Spielberg last time out, and 6 over the line in that sprint yesterday. There's confirmation on your screens of Alex Marquez's incoming penalty, slow on line during practice. This was his melee with Miller and Bagnaia.
Yeah, he was already unhappy with Fabio Di Giannantonio before this unfolded, and as he approaches turn 1 here, he begins to gesticulate in the direction. He's already shaking his head, look, gesticulating at Fabio Di Giannantonio, then at Jack Miller, who comes up alongside him, and they both get in the way of Pecco Bagnaia. So Pedro Acosta then goes from 7th place on the grid, and with riders who are serving long lap penalties up ahead of him, surely an opportunity to move forwards. Let's get some pre-race thoughts from his team boss, Aki Ayo, joins Jack.
Yeah, it does indeed. This feels like a huge opportunity for Pedro to salvage something from a weekend that on Friday, Aki, looked incredibly promising, with a couple of riders on that second row having to do long lap penalties. What are the tactics going to be in the opening laps?
Yes, of course, there is some, let's say, penalty for Enea and everything, which is a little bit, let's say, confusing our plans. But of course, the whole weekend has been positive. Yesterday, really shame, so we hope at least a bit better luck today for the first corners, for the first lap, and I think there is potential for really good results.
If you come away from this weekend without a podium finish, will that feel like a missed opportunity?
It's too early to talk about this now. Let's do the race and see what we can do. But as I repeat so many times, important is this general improvement and trend to get closer and closer to the top.
Pedro,
that's the point.
Pedro mentioned yesterday in that qualifying crash, he lost a set of front forks that he felt were giving him a little bit more feeling, and the bike felt a little bit different in the sprint. What can you tell us about them?
Yes, there is some different specs what we have played a little bit in the last races, and of course, a rider always miss some part what it's not available now. The same part is again available in the next race, but I don't think that's the key point now. That for sure more important is to survive well from the first corners and first lap and have a solid race.
Thanks, Aki. Good luck.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thanks, Jack. Thanks to Aki Ayo. Yeah, Pedro Acosta, how big an opportunity has he missed? Well, I'll ultimately be able to answer that in around about an hour and a half's time, because we haven't had the 26 lap Grand Prix yet, and he might still be able to recover the situation, but it certainly felt from Friday that he had pace to be starting a little bit higher on the grid than 7th place, and of course by starting 7th it did put him on the outside and in the middle of all those early problems. Let's get an update from a technical point of view and rejoin Jack.
Yeah, just a very small thing that I've noticed on both Pedro Acosta and Brad Binder's machine. They've been jumping about throughout the course of the weekend, but they are going to race them. A lot of you at home will know about the Stegosaurus wings on the rear of the bike. Well, both Pedro and Brad for this one have got slightly bigger ones. They've almost doubled in size, which obviously is going to, I would imagine, hope to offer just a little bit more traction under braking. So they have been jumping about all weekend, all 4 bikes actually, some trying them, then deciding to go for what they were used to. So interesting that the factory guys for the Grand Prix are going to opt for those brand new, slightly bigger rear wings.
Thanks as always, Jack. Good spot there down in pit lane. We'll keep a close eye then on the progress of both Acosta and Brad Binder. Here is Joan Mir, and as we mentioned, excellent when the luck has gone his way and he's been able to avoid troubles and dramas on the factory Honda. He's been pretty impressive and pretty fast of late. 6 over the line in the Grand Prix last weekend in Spielberg. That was only his 2nd Grand Prix top 6 in 47 for Honda. His first on a Sunday since India in 2023. And he's backed it up. He's got some momentum. First sprint top 6 on an RC213V here yesterday. As we got a quick glimpse there of the vast Lake Balaton, one of the biggest lakes in Central Europe. Some water sport lovers' paradise out there. There's been sailing, surfing, swimming, you name it. It's been happening on Lake Balaton this weekend. It's certainly one of Hungary's top holiday hotspots. Nobody hotter right now, though, than Marc Marquez in the MotoGP World Championship as the riders filter out of pit lane. But as Marc chases his 7th successive victory, a 7th consecutive double. Can anybody lay a glove on 93.
But it certainly has been plain sailing for him so far in 2025, right from the opening Saturday of the season in Buriram, when he opened his account on Ducati debut with the maximum 12 World Championship points. He's only lost one sprint since then, and that was when he followed his brother home at Silverstone, the only weekend this year where we've not seen Marc Marquez take victory either on a Saturday or on a Sunday. And he's already got his 13th sprint win to his name this season in 2025. And with his major opposition, you feel, on pure pace back on the third row of the grid, Marc Marquez will be laser focused on just getting the perfect start, getting himself around turn one, staying out of any melees in those early stages. But we have seen already, without spoiling in too much from Moto3 and Moto2, that you can make overtakes around this Balaton Park circuit. It certainly isn't easy to pass around here, but potentially some drama might fall away in the latter stages if riders begin to run out of tyres, and that certainly appears to be the case in the two races we've seen already today. Some riders on the absolute edge of grip in the latter stages, so Marc Marquez might look like the overwhelming favourite, and of course he is, but there are 26 laps of hard work still to come before he can claim a 7th consecutive double.
There is double MotoGP world champion Pecco Bagnaia, just taking the advantage of a run through pit lane. He had a poor morning water session. Let's be frankly honest, it's been a poor weekend by his exceptionally high standards. There is the proof. 84 points less than at the same stage in 2024. It's just all gone pear-shaped, hasn't it, for Pecco coming into this Michelin Grand Prix of Hungary. Halfway through round 14, 209 points behind his teammate Marc Marquez, at 57 behind Alex in the battle for second place right now in the championship. Well, as we mentioned, recent upgrades really are starting to steer HRC back towards the front of Grand Prix racing, back to where they feel they'll belong. A double top 6 in the sprint yesterday for Marini and Mir. Can they match it this afternoon? Let's get the thoughts of the boss, Alberto Puig.
Alberto, what a really positive weekend it's been so far for Honda. Double top 6 yesterday, great result for Luca in particular. Just how pleased are you with the obvious progress that's been on show?
Well, it's been good since Friday. Both riders are trying maximum. They are making a big effort. And we are also trying to improve, as we said in Sepang in February, you know, that after the break we expected some catch-up or improvement. And, yeah, we are slowly getting there, and, yeah, we are happy. I mean, Honda is working very hard, and the guys are working in the teams really, really hard. And the riders are, yeah, doing maximum. So this is what normally all the professionals teams do. They try everything they have and possible can to get the results.
We can see last time out in Austria the new aerodynamics package, new chassis as well. How much of a step has that allowed the bike to take?
I would say that we cannot just say it's this or that. I mean, also to be fair, to be honest, this track suits quite well the Honda character, you know. It's a track where you change the direction a lot, and in this type of tracks, if you see the history, Honda has always been strong. But yeah, I mean, of course we are progressing. We are trying new things, new aero, new chassis, swing. I mean, we are trying to do all we can, and yeah, things are slowly getting there.
Just finally on Luca, after that big crash in Suzuka, the way he's been able to bounce back, the result in Germany, and then backing it up yesterday as well. What does that say about his character?
Well, he's a very calm guy. He makes steps in a very precise way, and I've never seen him nervous. So he understood his injury. At some point it was a little bit not nice, let's say. He understood, he stood calm, he recovered, he came back, he took his time, and I can say that he's a really, really smart guy and cool, and yeah, now he's improved his level, clearly. So yeah, let's hope he can today be a little bit lucky at turn one, like all of them, and see if he can do it.
Thanks, Alberto. Have a good race.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jack. Thanks to Honda boss Alberto Puig as we're just running through the grid. This, of course, could change. This is the initial information we have received from Michelin, our official tyre supplier. At the moment, and I stress at the moment, Marc Marquez is the only rider on the front row. The information we have right now that's on the medium front, medium rear tyre. Both Marco Bezzecchi and Fabio Di Giannantonio, as it stands right now, with 20 minutes or so to lights out, they are medium front, soft rear tyre. That could change.
Quartararo, another rider we saw there with the medium rear tyre. So too Luca Marini, Pecco Bagnaia, also on the medium rear tyre. He's coming from 13th place on the grid. Of course, temperatures aren't exactly scorching hot, but we are bathed in beautiful sunshine here at Balaton Park. Still a decent gust of wind that has caused one or two problems as we've gone through the weekend, and what is quite a wide open circuit, and of course being so close to quite a large body of water, you do tend to see the wind pick up in these sorts of areas, but it feels like it's going to take a serious following wind for the competition to chase down Marc Marquez today.
That looks like a very pleasant afternoon on the boat, doesn't it, in the middle of the vast Lake Balaton. And when we say vast, we mean vast. A shoreline apparently of near on 200 kilometres. At its widest point, it's 9 kilometres. It's a pretty impressive body of water which neighbours this Balaton Park circuit. As we gear up then, and the countdown continues towards the first Hungarian Grand Prix in over 3 decades. You just saw there on the graphic Marco Bezzecchi. The last time we ventured out onto pastures new in India, he was the victor on that occasion. Then, of course, he was on the VR46 Ducati. He did it in some dominant style as well, did Bez. Pole position, then he absolutely destroyed the field in the Grand Prix of India to win by over 8 seconds. Bez at the checker flag in the sprint yesterday, 7th. Of course, after he had to take avoiding action of all the drama unfolding on his inside as Quartararo came charging through and clipped Enea Bastianini.
And yeah, that run to turn 1 you feel is going to have such a big bearing on what we see in this Grand Prix today. And will Fabio Di Giannantonio and Marco Bezzecchi on the front row of the grid alongside Marc Marquez, will they have perhaps a slight advantage off the line with that soft rear tyre on, just getting the Ducati and the Aprilia respectively hooked up off the line, and that blast down to turn 1? Is that potentially an opportunity for them to see some early track position on Marc Marquez? Marc Marquez clearly so confident in terms of his prospects today. Did you then from the front row starting 3rd, and Jack's got an update on it?
Yeah, I'm not sure if Fabio Di Giannantonio's bike might just have a bit of a technical problem on the grid here, because the laptop is out, it's plugged in. There are 3 or 4 different electronic engineers just trying to look at it, including 2 from the factory team themselves. So clearly something isn't right for Digi here. I tried to grab a word with Pablo Nieto, who went to check with some of the FIM staff, I imagine, on what the rules precisely are in case they have to take Digi's bike off the grid here. I'm hoping to try grab a word with Pablo in a second once he's free, but something just isn't right for Digi.
Well, the pit lane exit is now closed, so if they do push Digi's bike off the grid at this stage, he won't be allowed to leave the pit lane until they start the warm-up lap, which will see him take a double long lap penalty and start from his grid position. So they do have a little bit of time. They've got around about 10 minutes or so. Let's get the very latest from VR46. Pablo Nieto's with Jack.
Pablo, it looks like there's a problem for Fabio here. Just bring us up to speed. What's happening?
Yeah, we are checking everything what's happened, because he feels something stress in the lap to go into the grid.
You were just checking with the rules, I imagine. Is there a possibility he has to come off the grid?
Of course, but you will have a penalty, so we have to check everything to try to start from here.
Thanks, Pablo.
Thank you.
Crikey, as if there's not enough high pressure around in these intense moments as we count down towards the start of this Grand Prix. Let's hope, as far as VR46 Racing, Ducati, and in particular Fabio Di Giannantonio are concerned, that they can rectify whatever that issue was he felt on the sighting lap. We were just talking, weren't we, not that long ago, about how tough his recent Sundays have been. He's gone pointless in the last 3, his worst runs since 2022. He won't want to be making it 4 successive Grand Prix without a point through no fault of his own. So yeah, a bit of drama then on the back of the front row of the grid,
which Marc Marquez will be blissfully unaware of as he strides back onto the grid, having sat in his Ducati box for a few minutes just for a bit of peace, quiet and sanctuary staying away from the hustle and bustle and the many people that you can see from overhead on the grid. Pedro Acosta has done the same, and he now walks back onto the grid and of course has to walk over to the third row of the grid to find his KTM. And will he take perhaps a different approach at the start? Will he prefer to be up on the inside down to turn 1? He might not have a choice, but clearly being on the outside into turn 1 yesterday was the worst place to be. That was where all the chaos ended up.
It's been an eventful weekend for Acosta. 3 falls, although he has not finished outside the top 4 in the last 2 in Brno and the Red Bull Ring. That impressive recent run was halted abruptly by the crash in the sprint yesterday. And now then, keep an eye on Fermin Aldeguer's late race pace, because it was sensational, wasn't it, last weekend in Austria. Alex Marquez coming from 14th on the grid after his grid penalty. What are the prospects for the Grazzini boys? Let's get the thoughts of the boss, Michele Massini.
Yeah, I'm sure there's going to be more than a few eyes on the number 54 on this one, Michele, after what he was able to do last weekend in Austria with a penalty for Fabio and an Enea. It looks like potentially an issue for Didier on the grid as well. This presents a big opportunity again for Fermin.
I think yes, because we shown also another big step, another improvement this morning during the warm-up. So we will try, of course, first of all, to try to gain some position at the beginning, because we know that the pace is very, very good.
That's Didier's bike, by the way, in the background, that they're just warming up to try and test that electronic problem. On Alex as well, obviously a massive challenge from back there on the 5th row of the grid. How much is it just about seeing the checkered flag and moving on to Barcelona?
Yeah, it will be very difficult, so we will see if at the end we can gain some position, try at least to finish at least in the 8th position or better, because we have the speed, but you know, it is a very tight and difficult circuit to overtake the other riders, so we will see.
Thanks, Michele.
Welcome.
Yes, thanks, Jack. Thanks to Michele Massini. We can hear in the background there, they're firing into life, aren't they, Fabio De Gianantonio as a caddy, to see if they have successfully diagnosed this issue. The Gianantonio, clearly you can see he's hopped off of that GP25 just to get some shade and just let his mechanics, let his crew, let the Ducati engineers go about their work in trying to make sure that those issues that he felt on the side lap are rectified. Let's just hope that Didier is going to be able to start this 26-lap race from that front row. You won't see him on the grid at the moment. He's just sort of sat close to where the factory Ducati pit canopy is. Alberto Puig, well, he would have been seriously impressed with Luca Marini's display in the sprint yesterday, and that Puig there, well, he's been there, done it and seen it as a rider and a team manager, hasn't he, for so many years. Just some final instructions going from Puig to Marini. This is MotoGP Technical Director Danny Aldridge in the blue shirt there, just having a long chat with VR46 Racing boss Pablo Nieto. I think he was just seeking clarification on the rules there, wasn't he? If we move the bike off the grid, Danny, what happens next? 2
long lap penalties will be he'll still be able to start from his grid position. He will leave the pit lane at the end of the warm-up, or the end of the start of the warm-up lap, join the grid, start from the front row of the grid, but take 2 long lap penalties. That is if his bike leaves the grid. Of course, if his bike doesn't leave the grid, he won't have to. Let's listen in. I think they're giving De Gianantonio the choice there, aren't they? Which of the 2 would you rather do, Didier?
What a nightmare. What a nightmare situation as far as Fabio De Gianantonio is concerned. Let's go straight back down to Jack on the grid.
Yeah, you're absolutely right in what you were saying. Pablo Nieto was just giving the 2 options to Didier. He explained the 2 options to Ucho as well, saying, what do we want to do, guys? We either wheel this bike off the grids now and take the safe bet that we can't fix this problem, we just go onto a bike that we know will work, or we do the warm-up lap, we check if it's okay, and then if it's not right, we have to change on the warm-up lap and we come down pit lane. It looks as though the VR46 team are prepared for either alternative.
Yeah, great stuff. Thanks very much, Jack. All about just keeping his cool and keeping his composure right now, isn't it, for Fabio De Gianantonio? Worst possible scenario, isn't it, going into a high-pressure situation like the build-up to a MotoGP race is. We're going to be keeping a very, very close eye on number 49. Don't worry, Jack down in pit lane and all of us in the commentary box as well. Fermin Aldeguer then, 5th over the line in the sprint yesterday. Threatened, didn't he? Threatened 4th, maybe better, but just could not find a way through on the late braking factory Honda of Luca Marini. another top 6 finish though for Aldiger. That's his 6th sprint top 6 of the season so far, as the debate and the choices and the decisions, well, they have to be taken very, very soon, don't they? The Gian Antonio just gives a little bit of a nod to one of his VR46 crew. Oh, what a nightmare. What a nightmare. We're going to take a pause though now for the national anthem conducted by the Hungarian Air Force Band. So the Hungarian Air Force Band that conducts, first time we've heard the Hungarian national anthem at a Grand Prix in Hungary since 1992. Here comes the Hungarian flag being dropped onto the circuit. Let's go quickly though back down to Jack for the latest Digia drama.
Yeah, Pablo Nieto just explaining to Danny Aldridge what the plan is. The laptop has been unplugged, the race tyres have gone into this bike on the grid. There's a little bit of confidence they might have been able to solve it, but he is just informing to Digia that if the problem still persists on the warm-up lap, the second bike will be ready to go.
Thanks, Jack. So Fabio Di Gianantonio, we hope, will start from the front row of the grid, but he might yet have to start this Grand Prix from the pit lane. We will be watching him very, very closely as he goes round on the warm-up lap. The warm-up lap begins, by the way, in 6 minutes' time, so they really are running it up to the wire down at VR46. And how difficult is it going to be, whatever happens here, for Fabio Di Gianantonio to keep his head clear and just focus on the job at hand? There must be so many thoughts and so many concerns going through his mind right now. He sits back on top, his number 49, his VR46 Ducati, which he took to second place in the Tissot sprint yesterday. Uccio Salucci there with a little handshake just to try and keep Fabio Di Gianantonio calm, but this was him on his way to the grid.
Yeah, clearly, the Gian Antonio, who's looking relatively cool and relaxed. There is his spare bike, should he require it for this 26-lap Grand Prix of Hungary. But it was a touring sighting lap, wasn't it, from Digi when he identified there was a potential issue. Let's go and get the thoughts of Prix boss Paolo Bonora. Marco Bezzecchi on the front row, looking to continue his recent purple patch form. And Jorge Martin in the sprint points finishes for the first time yesterday. Well, what can the brilliant duo do, Jack?
Paolo, I'm sure Marco's first plan is just to avoid any problems at turn one like yesterday. And in terms of tyre choice, just talk us through the decision that you've had to make.
Yeah, you are right. The corner one is the most critical point of the circuit, in particular during the launch. So it's necessary to take with in a very good way that corner and stay out of any problem, because he show a very good race pace, and we hope during today with a different temperature on the tarmac that we can see different behavior of the race, and we hope also that Jorge, after the positive comment of this morning, that show a good race pace as well.
Thanks, Paolo. Good luck.
Thanks.
Yeah, that's an excellent point made by Paolo Bonora. Jorge Martin was third fastest in this morning's warm-up session, so we're keeping a close eye on the Martinator trying to work his way through the pack. Marco Bezzecchi, victorious, of course, in the British Grand Prix at Silverstone. He's followed that up recently with 3 podiums in his last 4 Grand Prix starts, in Assen, in Brno, and in the Red Bull Ring, where on all 3 occasions he posed a pretty big threat to the domination of Marc Marquez. He was doing so also as well in the Saxon Ring, wasn't he, when he crashed out of 2nd place, as did Fabio Di Giannantonio. Danny Aldridge, MotoGP technical director there, once again locked in some pretty in-depth discussions with VR46 boss Pablo Nieto. How do you just... trying to get your mind on the job, get your focus in the zone, must be really tough right now for Fabio Di Giannantonio, unsure of which motorcycle is going to be starting this Grand Prix and where he's going to be starting it from.
Well, he'll have to make a clear decision before he comes to the grid. He doesn't want to be in any kind of indecision. If you're going to come to the grid, you're stuck with that bike now until the end of the Grand Prix. And of course, if that bike's not running properly, that end could come rather soon once the race gets underway. So Fabio Di Giannantonio, of course, would want to do everything to start from 3rd on the grid, having qualified so well and finished the sprint in 2nd place yesterday. And around a track such as this, if you're starting from the pit lane, it's a remote hope of scoring points, let alone getting on the podium.
So the grid starts to clear for the first time since 1992. MotoGP is going to roar into life here in Balaton Park. Will that front row shortly feature Fabio Di Giannantonio with all of his pre-race technical issues? A big headache for Digia. 3rd on the grid. 2nd place, 2nd fastest in Q2, Marco Bezzecchi, winner of our last first-time MotoGP battle over in India at the end of 2023, but looking to complete a magnificent 7th successive double victory from pole is Marc Marquez.